I still remember the moment as if it just happened. I was standing by the office coffee machine adding a dash of oat milk to my morning blend when Ryan, the new CEO and son of the company's founder, walked into the break room. He didn't greet me. He didn't smile. He just looked at me like I was part of the furniture he'd decided to throw out. "Lily, I need to see you in my office. Now." It wasn't a request. I had been with the company for nearly 11 years. In that time, I had built the client services department from scratch, negotiated over 100 contracts, and trained most of the team that now sat just outside his office door. But none of that mattered to Ryan. His father, Mr. Cole, had built the company with grit and loyalty. Ryan inherited the title, and apparently thought it gave him the right to play God. I followed him, trying to shake off the tension building in my chest. He didn't even sit down. "You're fired," he said, voice flat, emotionless. "We don't need lazy people like you dragging this place down." I blinked. At first, I thought it was some kind of twisted joke. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he replied, casually flipping through a stack of papers like he was deciding what to have for lunch. "You can collect your things and leave, effective immediately." I stared at him, stunned. My heart pounded in my ears. I wanted to shout, to defend myself, to demand an explanation. But instead, I smiled. A calm, polite, deliberate smile. "Understood," I said. "Have a nice day, Ryan." I walked out of his office with my head high, but inside I was trembling. My teammates looked at me as I passed, sensing something was wrong. A few started to stand, ready to ask questions, but I gave them a subtle shake of the head. "Don't make this harder." I packed my desk in silence. As I drove home, memories flooded my mind. 11 years. 11. I had given this company more time than I gave my own family. Late nights, working through holidays, taking calls while holding back tears after my divorce. I gave them everything. And now I was dismissed like I was nothing. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious. Why? That question haunted me all night. I barely slept. Something about the way Ryan had said it, so confidently, so carelessly, didn't sit right. The timing was strange, too. We were about to finalize one of the company's largest contracts, a deal I had spent 6 months preparing. I knew the client inside and out. I had even booked the final review meeting for that Friday. And now I was gone. Had he even looked at the contract details? The next morning, just after 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number. I let it ring, unsure if I could handle another blow. But curiosity won again. "Lily, it's Mr. Cole." The voice sent a jolt down my spine. The real CEO. The man who had hired me 11 years ago after a single interview. "I just walked into the office," he said, and I could hear the tightness in his throat. "Why the hell did you pack up and leave? What happened?" I hesitated. "Your son fired me." Silence. Then, with a sharp inhale, "What?" "Yesterday. He said I was lazy and that I wasn't needed anymore." There was a long pause before he spoke again, this time slowly, like he was trying to stay calm. "Lily, did he read your contract?" I furrowed my brows. "What do you mean?" "He's supposed to finalize the Kingswell deal today, isn't he?" "Yes. We were scheduled to meet them at 11. Jesus Christ. I could hear papers rustling in the background. Then a loud thud, like he'd slammed something on his desk. "Lily, your contract has a clause," he said. "One I insisted on after the last acquisition disaster. You're not just the account manager. You're the only authorized negotiator for the Kingswell deal." I froze. "He can't close the deal without you," Mr. Cole continued. "Not legally, not ethically, not even practically. That contract will fall apart unless you're there." A slow, burning realization settled in my chest. He hadn't read it. Ryan had no idea what he'd done. And that's when something inside me shifted. The betrayal still hurt? Yes. But now I felt something else entirely. Control. He had pulled the trigger far too quickly, and now the gun was pointed at himself. Mr. Cole hung up without another word. I could feel his fury through the silence that followed. I sat motionless in my apartment, coffee growing cold beside me, staring at nothing in particular. He didn't know. His son had fired me without even reading the contract. I leaned back on the couch and let out a quiet, bitter laugh. After 11 years, this was how it went down. A spoiled, impulsive man-boy trying to play CEO, making decisions like they were moves in a video game. But real companies don't respawn after bad calls. And this one was about to find that out the hard way. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next. Part of me wanted to get dressed and show up to the office just to watch the fallout unfold. But another part, the one that had endured years of thankless overtime and swallowed my pride more times than I could count, wanted to let them burn. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:13 a.m., I got another call. This time, it was Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call. This one from reception, then legal, then accounting. I stared at my phone as it buzzed nonstop, lighting up like a Christmas tree. I didn't answer a single one. The voicemail icon blinked at me, relentless. I tapped it open. "Lily, hi, it's Ryan." His voice was strained. "Listen, there was a misunderstanding yesterday. I might have acted too fast. We need you back. Today. It's urgent. Please call me." Urgent. The word rolled around in my head like a marble in a glass. He hadn't said sorry, not once, not even in a fake corporate way. Instead, it was panic disguised as politeness. I took a sip of my cold coffee, still not moving from the couch. At 10:32, my phone buzzed again. This time, a number I hadn't saved in years. Nicole, a former colleague. We'd grown close back when she was in my department, before she transferred to marketing. I picked up. "Lily, you won't believe what's happening here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Try me." Ryan just got chewed out by his dad, like, in front of everyone. The meeting room was full. Mr. Cole walked in and slammed the Kingswell contract on the table. I raised an eyebrow. "He brought the contract?" "Oh, yeah." And he asked one question. "Did you read this before firing Lily?" "And?" Ryan tried to bluff, said something about moving in a new direction and reevaluating roles. But Mr. Cole didn't buy it. He flipped to the clause you always talked about, the one that says you're the sole negotiator on the Kingswell account. That clause was there for a reason. I know, everyone knows, except Ryan. She paused for a moment. I could hear office murmurs in the background. "Lily." He looked pale, like ghost pale. He realized he's the reason Kingswell's about to walk. I exhaled slowly. "And what did Mr. Cole say?" He told him, "If this deal falls through, your position here becomes negotiable." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. There it was, the first crack in Ryan's armor. "I don't know what you're planning," Nicole added, "but whatever it is, you have the upper hand now." I ended the call with a soft, "Thank you," then stood and looked out the window. The skyline was quiet, still. I always found comfort in that. The city, indifferent to human chaos, going on as usual. At 11:15, another message came through, this time from Mr. Cole himself. "Lily, I'm sincerely sorry for what happened. I misjudged the situation. Please come in. Not just for the deal, but so we can talk. Privately." It was tempting, but I wasn't ready to just walk back in like nothing happened. Not yet. Ryan's mistake wasn't just about a contract. It was about respect, about trust, and about the years I had given. Years that couldn't be replaced by a panicked phone call and a seat at a negotiation table. Still, something stirred inside me. I wasn't a petty person, but I wasn't weak either. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. I picked up my phone and finally responded. Not with a call, but a message. "I'll consider returning to finalize the Kingswell deal, but only under specific conditions. I'd like to speak with Mr. Cole directly beforehand. I hit send. Then I changed out of my pajamas and began to prepare. By the time I arrived at the office, it was just past noon. I didn't use the employee entrance. I walked through the main lobby like a guest, a move I knew would draw attention. Everyone knew I had been fired the day before. My return now was more than a quiet comeback. It was a statement. The receptionist stood up the moment she saw me. "Ms. Harris." "Lily," she stammered. "Mr. Cole is expecting you. Right this way." As I followed her down the hall, I noticed the atmosphere had changed. People looked up from their desks. Conversations paused. There was a sense of quiet tension, like the building itself was holding its breath. Mr. Cole was standing at the door to his office when I arrived. He wasn't smiling. "Lily," he said, nodding. "Thank you for coming in." I nodded back but didn't extend my hand. He stepped aside, letting me walk past him into the office. It was quiet for a moment as I took a seat across from his massive oak desk. He closed the door behind him, leaned against it, and let out a long sigh. "I made a mistake," he began. "A big one. I gave my son too much authority, too fast. I wanted him to prove himself, but I didn't expect him to burn bridges before even learning how to build them." I stayed silent. He sat down. His voice softened. "What he did to you was unprofessional, disrespectful, and frankly, it jeopardized a deal we've worked over half a year to secure." I nodded slowly. "Yes, it did. I read the contract again this morning, every word. You were given full autonomy over the Kingswell account. Legally, the client won't recognize anyone else as a representative of this company during negotiations. That clause was put in place after the Steel Ridge debacle. I remember it well." "So do I said quietly. "I was the one who managed the fallout." His eyes met mine. "You didn't deserve what happened yesterday," he said. "And I'd like to offer you your job back, with full authority to finish the deal. Whatever conditions you need, we'll make them work." There was sincerity in his tone. Regret, too. But this wasn't just about the deal. It was about leadership, accountability, dignity. "I'll return," I said, "but I want everything in writing. A revised contract, clear autonomy over Kingswell, and no interference from Ryan." He nodded immediately. "Done. And one more thing," I added, voice firm. "This can't happen again. Not to me, not to anyone." A long silence followed. Then he gave me a slow, thoughtful nod. "You have my word." With that, I stood. The moment I stepped out of his office, I could see Ryan standing down the hall, arms crossed, pretending to be deep in conversation with a junior executive. But his eyes locked on mine the second I appeared. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I walked straight past him, and I swear, for a second, I saw the exact moment he realized his control was slipping. By 1 p.m., the boardroom was ready. The Kingswell team had just arrived, and we had about 30 minutes before the official meeting. I reviewed the documents one last time, confirming all the points we had previously negotiated. Their CEO, Mr. Saeed, was a no-nonsense man with sharp instincts. He valued trust above all, and any whiff of internal disorganization would send him running. As I placed the printed Arabic translation of the final terms onto the table, I caught sight of Ryan pacing outside the glass walls of the meeting room like a caged animal. Mr. Cole stepped out to intercept him. Their muffled voices escalated quickly until Mr. Cole's hand shot up, silencing him. Ryan's face turned crimson. He looked over his shoulder at me with a mix of rage and humiliation. Then he walked away. That was the last time I saw him that day. At 1:30 sharp, Mr. Saeed entered with his aides. I greeted him in Arabic, and his eyes lit up. He smiled, a rare gesture from him. "You remembered?" he said warmly. "Respect goes a long way." The meeting began. It went flawlessly. 2 hours later, we shook hands and signed the deal. After they left, Mr. Cole approached me again. This time, his face showed genuine relief. "You saved us," he said, "and I owe you more than an apology." You owe your company a leader, I replied, one who knows the difference between power and responsibility. He didn't argue. Later that evening, as I walked to my car, the tension I'd carried for the past 48 hours finally began to lift. I had come back not as an employee, but as someone who understood her value and demanded it be recognized. But I also knew this wasn't over. Ryan might have been quiet today, but men like him don't disappear. They retreat, and then they retaliate. By the following week, the Kingswell deal had made headlines in our industry newsletter. A breakthrough in cross-border negotiations, it read. Cole & Company secures a historic partnership with Middle Eastern distributor through tailored strategy and multilingual leadership. They didn't mention me by name, but everyone in the company knew who had sealed that deal. My inbox was flooded with quiet congratulations, internal messages from staff who had stayed silent during the storm. Some were from juniors I'd mentored years ago. Others were from managers who had once ignored me in meetings but now praised my leadership under pressure. I appreciated their words, but I wasn't naive. I knew how quickly people shift when the wind changes direction. The mood around the office had lightened. There were smiles, laughter again in the break room. Mr. Cole had made it clear. Ryan was no longer involved in high-level decision-making until further notice. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Small things began to happen. First, it was the expense reports. The reimbursement for my travel to the Kingswell meeting was delayed. Then, documents I had submitted for approval were returned to me unsigned, without explanation. Next, an email I never sent, allegedly from my address, was flagged by IT. It contained incorrect client information and had been forwarded to one of our overseas partners. Luckily, the partner was someone I had a good relationship with, and he reached out directly to clarify. But the mistake had already planted doubt. I reported it to our internal systems team. They said there was no sign of external hacking. The message had originated from inside the office. That's when I knew. Ryan was behind it. He was no longer trying to fire me. That approach had failed. Now, he wanted to make me look incompetent, to smear my reputation slowly, subtly, until I either quit in frustration or someone else decided I was a liability. It was classic corporate sabotage. And it wasn't the first time I'd seen it. Back at my first job, fresh out of university, I worked under a director who played the same game. He wouldn't confront you directly, but he'd cut off your resources, isolate you from projects, quietly poison your name until the only option left was to disappear. But I wasn't 22 anymore. I wasn't going to disappear. I documented everything. Every missed email, every mistake that I hadn't made, every delay. I had learned the hard way that paper trails are more powerful than emotions in environments like this. I even started using a private notebook, logging times, dates, conversations, just in case. Then one afternoon, I overheard something that confirmed my suspicions. I was passing the conference room when I heard Ryan's voice inside. Too loud for a private discussion. "She's unstable," he said. "Since she came back, she's been erratic, aggressive. I don't think she's fit to manage high-pressure clients." I stopped in my tracks. "I'm just saying," he continued. "Maybe we should start thinking about succession planning for client services. She's clearly overextended." Another voice responded. Someone I didn't recognize. A newer executive, maybe. But the Kingswell deal. She pulled that off under serious pressure. Ryan scoffed. "She got lucky. We can't run a company on luck." I stood frozen for a few moments, then quietly walked away. My blood ran cold, not out of fear, but from the icy precision of his tactics. He was planting seeds again, poisoning the well. That evening, I stayed late. The office was quiet, the halls dim. I sat alone in the glass meeting room, staring at the city lights, wondering how many more battles I would have to fight just to keep doing my job. And then, a voice broke the silence. "Still here?" I looked up. It was Mr. Cole. "I could ask you the same," I replied. He stepped inside, placed a folder on the table. "Your revised contract, with everything we agreed on. I opened it, read through the language. It was solid. I nodded in approval. I've also started an internal audit, he added. Too many things have been misfiled lately. I looked up sharply. He met my gaze. I'm not blind, Lily. I know Ryan isn't finished. Why haven't you stopped him? I asked. There was a long pause before he answered. Because I needed to see how far he'd go. He sounded tired, more like a father than a CEO in that moment. You're protecting the company, I said. He shook his head slowly. I'm trying to protect both of you, but maybe it's too late for one of you. I closed the folder. I don't need protection. I need you to decide what kind of legacy you want to leave behind. His eyes lingered on mine. Then he turned and left. And I knew. Something bigger was coming. The office felt colder that week. Not because of the weather, but because the air between people had changed. Conversations dropped to whispers when I walked by. Some employees smiled at me, others avoided eye contact altogether. The internal audit had begun, and everyone knew it. People were nervous. So was I. I hadn't asked Mr. Cole to launch an audit, but deep down I was relieved that he had. I needed the truth out in the open, not just for me, but for everyone who had been walking on eggshells since Ryan took over. Still, I knew how this game worked. In corporations, truth doesn't always lead to justice. Sometimes it leads to quiet exits and golden handshakes. Sometimes it's buried so deep behind red tape that the damage becomes irreversible. That Thursday, I was called into the audit committee's temporary office, an old storage room turned war room. Files were stacked on tables, monitors glowed with data, and a whiteboard was filled with timelines and digital breadcrumbs. David, the lead internal auditor, greeted me. Lily, thanks for coming in. We'd like to ask you a few questions about some recent irregularities. I nodded and took a seat. He pulled up a file on the screen. First, this email that appeared to be from your account. We've confirmed it was sent from a shared workstation near the break room. The credentials were manually entered. So someone used my login? He shook his head. Someone had your credentials. Copied them, most likely. This wasn't phishing. It was internal. I folded my arms. I reported that incident the day it happened. He gave a tight smile. Yes, and we're glad you did. We found a few others like it. Emails rewritten, spreadsheets altered, sign-offs removed. Always traced to shared machines. Always under your name. The weight in my chest grew heavier. This was coordinated, I said. David hesitated. Yes, and we've narrowed down the list of people who had access. We've also noticed unusual patterns linked to Ryan's executive assistant's login. I sat still. He continued carefully. We're not accusing anyone yet, but there's a clear pattern, sabotage intended to discredit you, and possibly others. I clenched my jaw. So what happens now? That's where it gets complicated, he said. Mr. Cole asked us to present our findings directly to him. He's made it clear. He wants the truth. All of it. No filters. I nodded slowly. Then I'll be there. David raised his eyebrows. You're not required. I will be there, I repeated. If this is going to surface, I want to look everyone in the eye. He didn't argue. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the others who had left quietly over the past year. Talented employees in their 30s and 40s who had simply moved on without much notice. People who had once been considered rising stars. I used to think it was just turnover. Now I wondered how many of them had been quietly pushed out by Ryan's games. I arrived early to the executive boardroom the next morning. Mr. Cole was already there, staring out the window like a man waiting for the final card to fall. David and 2 other auditors came in next. Then Ryan arrived. 10 minutes late, looking smug, phone in hand, not a trace of concern on his face, until he saw me. He paused at the door. She's not on the audit committee. Mr. Cole didn't turn. She's here at my request. Ryan shifted his weight uncomfortably. This is supposed to be internal, confidential. Then you should have kept it that way when you used company resources to fabricate emails, I said, my voice calm but sharp. Ryan scoffed. That's ridiculous. David spoke up. We've traced multiple login attempts tied to your assistant's account, all connected to irregularities targeting Lily's work. There's a clear timeline. Ryan's face began to shift, his practiced smugness cracking. You're reaching. She's just bitter about being let go. I looked him in the eye. You didn't let me go, Ryan. You sabotaged me, and you almost tanked the biggest deal this company has landed in 5 years. Mr. Cole finally turned. I gave you a chance, he said quietly. I gave you more than one, and you've done nothing but tear down the people trying to build something real here. Ryan's bravado faltered. This isn't what you think. No, Mr. Cole cut in. It's worse. A heavy silence filled the room. Then Mr. Cole stood. The board will be reviewing this report. Until then, you are suspended, effective immediately. Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but the words never came. He looked at me one last time. This time not with rage, but with disbelief. Like he had finally realized that none of his usual tricks were going to save him now. He walked out in silence. I stayed behind. Mr. Cole exhaled, his shoulders sagging. I failed him, he said, as a leader, and maybe as a father. You can't lead someone who refuses to grow, I said quietly. But you can lead the company. You still have that choice. He looked at me, then nodded. And for the first time since this all began, I felt the weight start to lift. 2 weeks had passed since the audit meeting, but the impact of that morning still echoed through every corner of the building. Ryan hadn't returned, and the once proud smirk he carried like a badge was now the stuff of whispered office gossip. The board moved quickly. The evidence was too strong, too detailed, too damning to ignore. The falsified emails, the login traces, the unexplained disappearance of files, the attempt to weaponize HR complaints, all under Ryan's direction or through people he manipulated. When the final report came out, it was clear. Ryan hadn't just tried to sabotage me. He had compromised the integrity of the company itself. His suspension became a termination. The official announcement cited breaches of ethical conduct and internal misconduct. No lawsuits, no press release. Just a quiet exit through the back door of corporate history. But word spread anyway. I thought I'd feel triumphant when I heard the news. Instead, I felt calm, not victorious, just steady. Like I had weathered the storm, and now I could finally breathe. A few days later, Mr. Cole called me into his office. Close the door, he said. I did. He sat at his desk, a folder in front of him, but he didn't open it yet. I've spent a lot of time thinking about everything that's happened, he began, and what I want this company to be moving forward. I didn't speak. I let him finish. You've shown more leadership in the past month than most executives show in a career. You protected our biggest deal, held your composure in a public humiliation, and navigated personal attacks with professionalism. That's the kind of person I want helping run this company. He slid the folder across the desk. Inside was a promotion letter, Director of Client Strategy, an executive-level role, one that reported directly to him. I looked up, startled. I didn't ask for this. I know, he said. That's why you deserve it. I hesitated, then gave him a small nod. If I accept this, I want a say in how we move forward. I don't want to just hold a title. I want to rebuild this culture, the right way. He smiled. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Later that evening, as I sat alone in my new office, a temporary one while renovations were underway, I stared at the blank nameplate on the door. For years, I'd walked these halls wondering if anyone really saw the work I did. The late nights, the client saves, the fires I put out without a single word of credit. I thought staying quiet was the best way to keep peace, to not cause friction. But silence had almost cost me everything. It wasn't just about a contract or a position. It was about remembering that competence is not arrogance, and professionalism is not weakness. I had been underestimated, dismissed, and sabotaged, but I had never been defeated, and I hadn't let myself become bitter in the process. That, to me, was the real win. In the weeks that followed, I started reshaping the department. I reopened lines of communication. I reinstated people who had been pushed out unfairly. I created an anonymous reporting system so no one else had to fear retaliation for speaking up. I even made time for the younger employees who were just starting out, some of whom had witnessed what I went through and quietly asked how I stayed strong. I told them the truth. "You don't always get to pick the battles," I said, "but you do get to decide who you become in the middle of them." As for Ryan, last I heard he was interviewing at smaller firms out of state, but his reputation had caught up to him. Some said Mr. Cole pulled strings to make sure his name didn't get dragged publicly. Maybe that was a father's last act of love. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. One afternoon, while walking through the office, I passed the glass wall that once housed the Kingswell negotiation. I paused for a moment, remembering everything. The sabotage, the call, the panic, the eventual triumph. That single deal had changed the course of my career. But the real shift happened the moment I smiled at Ryan and walked out of his office, refusing to beg. That was the turning point. Not because I gave up, but because I knew what I was worth. And I refused to let anyone, boss's son or not, take that from me again.